Okay, we're on to the muscular system. There are more than 600 muscles in the human body, approximately 100 of which are primary movement muscles. We need to understand that the muscular system is composed of three types of muscle tissue. You have visceral, cardiac, and skeletal muscle. Visceral will be also known as your smooth or involuntary muscle because you have no conscious control over it. These are going to be found in the walls of the organs such as the intestines and esophagus. So your digestive system is a big part of that is unconscious control. When you eat and swallow food, your body automatically starts doing what it's supposed to do in terms of that. Your cardiac muscle is your heart muscle. Okay, simply once again is going to be under involuntary control as well because you can't make your heart beat. Obviously, it has to do it on its own unless you obviously have an acute issue with a medical problem. Skeletal muscle is often referred to as voluntary muscle because it is under our conscious control. That's obviously the big thing that we're going to be doing with helping people, besides obviously increasing cardiac output and so forth with cardiovascular training with the cardiac muscle. But as far as voluntarily having them, teach them to utilize and isolate muscles, that's where the skeletal muscle is the big part. And obviously that is where we get the whole skeletal muscular system, which is how those bag of bones work together. The muscles are what move the bones. When the skeletal muscular system work together to cause movement, they are referred to as a muscular skeletal system. That's where we can work together with orthopedic surgeon, physical therapists, and chiropractors in terms of helping those people to better utilize their joints by increasing their strength in the skeletal muscular system. The muscular system has three basic functions: to work with other systems in the body to assist in causing movement, to maintain posture, and create heat. Maintaining posture is going to be a gigantic part of what you're going to do as a trainer. You have a lot of people, everything we do is in the front of our bodies. We sit there and text, we type on the computer, we're on the phone, we're writing, we're reading. Everything's to the front of our body. We drive our cars like this. And a big part of what we do is isolating muscles, those voluntary decisions that we make to say, I'm going to work on these, what we call your subscapular muscles or your upper back muscles, which goes back to what I talked about earlier with the scapular motion, retraction, depression. And so if you're working on pulling those shoulder blades together using the rhomboids and trapezius muscles as well as the latissimus dorsi muscles, that helps with posture as well as stretching and so forth. Then obviously to create heat, we know that we utilize our muscles, we actually create heat or energy, kinetic energy. Characteristics of muscle tension. You have irritability, contractility, extensibility, and elasticity. These are the four terms you need to be familiar with characteristics of muscle tissue. Irritability allows the muscle to receive a response to stimuli that may respond to a nerve impulse or a sharp blow to the muscle or one of its tendons. Okay, and so like that would be an example when you go to the doctor and you have the little patella tendon reflex. The doctor takes a little hammer on the patella tendon right below your kneecap and actually strikes it. You're going to see it's irritated and actually cause your quadricep to fire off. And that's an example of irritability. Contractility is the ability of muscle to shorten or to contract when it's stimulated to do so. So when a muscle actually fires off and a muscle is actually utilized, it shortens. Whenever I work my bicep and I ball it up right here, the bicep actually shortens because those fibers cross over and we get that cross bridge formation. And then on the opposite end of that is extensibility, is the characteristic that allows a muscle to stretch either in a passive or an active state. So if I was going to do, for example, a tricep extension when I work the back of my arm, my bicep has got to be able to lengthen in order for my tricep to contract or shorten. And so that I can do that either from actively doing it, or somebody could take my elbow and I could totally relax and I could straighten it, and it allows my bicep to actually to stretch somewhat. Elasticity is when a muscle has been shortened or lengthened, it has the ability to return to its normal resting length or shape. That is a lot of times what we refer to as tone. If I was going to take my hand and I'm going to extend my fingers out, or I'm going to clench my fingers to make a fist, I'm extending or I'm shortening in this terms because I'm contracting my hand. But when I relax, I'm going to go to a certain resting length with my fingers, or a certain amount of tone, an automatic response where my muscles are somewhat tightening up. I'm not going to go all the way extended or all the way clenched. They're going to go somewhere in between to a resting length. That's an example of elasticity. Muscles are bands of fibers anchored to bones by tendons. We talked about that. Tendon is muscle to bone. Fascia, which is the covering or a tight sheath of connective tissue that wrap around the muscle fibers, which connects to the periosteum, which is the fibrous membrane covering the bones. Okay, so the actual muscle attaches via tendon, and then a fascia is a continuation of that, connecting it to the bone with the tendon. Most muscles have at least 2 tendons, each of them attaching to a different bone. One of these attachments tends to be more stationary or immobile and is referred to as the muscle's origin. Okay? A lot of times the origin is going to be the proximal side of it as well in terms of closer to. So like on a bicep, the origin is going to be up here in the shoulder, and versus the insertion is it tends to be the more mobile portion of attachment and is referred to as the muscle's insertion. So on a bicep, the origin is up here in my shoulder. The insertion is below my elbow, here underneath the side of my radius, and so whenever I'm flexing my bicep, that insertion contracts and then bends it towards the origin. On my pectoralis, my pec muscle, origin is going to be up here on my sternum, my clavicle, and the insertion is going to be out here in my humerus. So when I'm doing a chest fly, the movement is going to be at the insertion, the distal portion, the further away portion, okay? Same thing on a tricep. Origin is going to be up here. It's not going to be moving. The insertion is going to be by the elbow. So when I'm doing an extension, if I'm doing a cable extension, the insertion is the part that's moving, and the contraction, the shortening, goes towards the origin. Quadriceps, insertion down below in the tibia and fibula area, crisscrosses through the patella, the kneecap, and so that, and the origin is going to be up here in the top portion of the femur. So be familiar with the difference between origin and insertion. You do not have to know specific sites, but it's important to understand them. Here's an example of just a muscle structure that's been covered on another section. Muscles are found in pairs in the body on either side of the joint, allowing them to move bones in both directions. Paired muscles allow one muscle to relax or stretch while the other muscle is shortening or contracting. I actually just kind of talked about that when I was talking about the bicep going this way. The tricep has to be able to relax, okay? And what we call that our agonist, or also known as our prime mover, and this is the contracting muscle is doing the work. The other muscle of the muscle pair must relax or yield in order for the agonist to contract. This relaxed or stretched muscles are referred to as the antagonist. Okay, so on the example, if I was to do a bicep curl and I'm trying to take a dumbbell and I'm curling this way, this is my prime mover. This is the thing that's happening, is I'm taking this bicep and I'm curling a weight. In order for that to happen, I cannot simultaneously contract my tricep, which its job is to extend my elbow, okay? So biceps bend the elbow, triceps extend the elbow, okay? So I have to let my tricep back here relax those fibers, those are the antagonistic muscles, to bend the elbow. Now, on the flip-flop, if I was taking a cable up here, and the point of the exercise is to push down and actively use my triceps right here, the job is going to be then the work of the tricep. I'm pushing down, okay? I'm pushing down and I'm using my triceps. So my triceps, the back of my arms, are now the prime mover or agonist, aka agonist. And so now the bicep is the antagonist or opposite muscle that must lengthen or stretch to allow that to happen. If I was going to use my pecs and I was going to push an object forward, well, the pecs would be the prime mover or the agonist, aka the agonist, and the lats would have to allow some relaxation to occur to go forward. Quadriceps, if I was going to extend my quadricep, extend my knee, my hamstrings would have to be the antagonist, and they would have to relax in order for my quadriceps to kick out, and vice versa. If I was to do a prone leg curl where I was to actively flex my knee or bend my knee, in order to fire off and bend and use my hamstrings, the antagonist in this case would have to be the quadriceps. So in a lying hamstring curl, in other words, the prime mover is the hamstrings in that case. or the agonist, also known as, and the antagonist would be the quadriceps. If both muscles were to contract at the same time, movement of that joint would not be possible. I'd be trying to do a press down and my bicep wouldn't let go. I could not extend. They would be contracted. I'd be stuck. So you obviously have to let one go to do the other. So in review, prime mover is the muscle, is the single most important force creating the movement, okay? As opposed to the assister is the muscle that helps do the movement or can take over if the muscle was paralyzed. So in the case of the arm curl example, the biceps brachii, which is going to be right here, your primary bicep muscle, is our prime mover. And if it was to get unable to do it and it was paralyzed, the brachioradialis, which lies here and crisscrosses the elbow joint as well, it will help or assist in the motion. So if you're doing a bench press, the primary movement is from your pectoralis major, that's your prime mover. The anterior deltoid and the triceps are assisters. They help finish out the movement. So those are the ones that take over if the muscle was paralyzed. Stabilizers are muscles that statically contract to support movement. So they're not actively doing anything. They're more of a support structure. The deltoids of the shoulder joint, if I'm doing an arm curl, you'll see people do this and move their whole body, okay? That's not really the point of the arm curl. The point of the arm curl is to bend the elbow, to flex the elbow, okay? So I want to keep my humerus, my arm bone, as stationary as possible. So I'm going to have my deltoids firing off. I'm going to have my trapezius and rhomboids, these shoulder blades that stick together, and I'm going to keep those contracted so as a stabilizer, okay? We know that the agonist is also the prime mover, and the antagonist is the muscle that must relax to allow movement to occur. Don't confuse, even though agonist and prime mover are the same interchangeable terms, antagonists and assisters are not. So that can be a very confusing thing for some.